Good evening. This is Capital Talk. The Iran war is not just destroying cities, it is now destroying the global economy. Oil prices just recorded their biggest single-day surge in years. Ships are being attacked in the world's most critical waterway, and analysts are warning this is only the beginning. Here is the full picture. Before this war began on Friday, February 28th, a barrel of Brent crude oil was trading at $72.87. This Monday morning, that same barrel is trading at $79, up 8% in less than 72 hours. West Texas Intermediate crude was selling for about $72 a barrel Sunday night, up around 8% from its trading price of about $67 on Friday. A barrel of Brent crude, the international standard, was trading at around $79 per barrel Sunday night, up about 8% from its trading price of $72.87 on Friday. Traders were betting that oil supplies from Iran and elsewhere in the Middle East could slow or grind to a halt. Attacks across the region, including on two vessels traveling through the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow mouth of the Persian Gulf, have restricted countries' ability to export oil to the rest of the world. This is not normal market movement. This is fear. And when fear drives oil markets, prices move fast and they move hard. To understand why these prices are moving, you need to understand one geography lesson: the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is a key shipping route. If you picture the Persian Gulf, it is a big body of water. Iran, Qatar, Iraq, Kuwait, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, all these countries have energy exports. To get to foreign markets, those exports go through the Strait of Hormuz. About 20% of global oil and oil products go through that strait normally, but not right now. As one analyst put it, roughly 1/5 of global oil and LNG flows squeeze through the Strait of Hormuz. This is not an obscure canal. It is the aorta of the global energy system. Insurers, not Tehran, have temporarily halted coverage for vessels transiting the choke point through which roughly 20% of global petroleum and liquefied natural gas is shipped. What will determine the economic pressure on the military campaign against Iran is whether maritime traffic through the Strait of Hormuz resumes within days or remains suspended for months. Ships are not being formally blocked. They are simply refusing to move because insurance companies have pulled out, because tankers are being struck, and because no captain wants to sail into a war zone without coverage. The strait is not closed, but it is barely functioning. Attacks throughout the region, including on two vessels traveling through the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow mouth of the Persian Gulf, have restricted countries' ability to export oil to the rest of the world. That would likely result in higher prices for crude oil and gasoline, according to energy experts. Technically, the strait has not been formally closed. However, the withdrawal of commercial operators, major oil companies, and insurers has created a de facto closure for most global shipping. Insurance premiums are at 6-year highs, making transit economically unviable for most operators. 6-year highs on insurance premiums. That means even if a captain wants to sail through, the cost of insuring his cargo has become so extreme that it is financially impossible to do so. The war does not need to fire a single extra missile to keep oil off the market. The economics of fear are doing that job on their own. If crude oil prices were to rise to $100 per barrel and remain at those levels, that could add 0.6 to 0.7% to global inflation, according to Hamad Hussein, a climate and commodities economist at Capital Economics. He noted this would also lead to an increase in natural gas prices. The consensus among analysts points to Brent opening in the $85 to $90 range, with some scenarios putting the intraday high above $88. Sustained Brent above $90 for 1 to 2 weeks would represent a meaningful headwind to domestic economic messaging, the same pressure that prompted rapid tariff adjustments earlier this year. Patrick DeHaan of GasBuddy is predicting a 5 to 10% increase in oil prices. U.S. average gasoline prices are roughly $3 per gallon and will likely rise to at least $3.10 to $3.15 per gallon in the next couple of weeks. The shock would reverberate far beyond energy markets, tightening financial conditions, fueling inflation, and pushing fragile economies closer to recession in a matter of weeks, according to analysts. Let that sink in. Recession. Not for one country. For fragile economies globally, in a matter of weeks. That is the worst-case scenario being discussed by serious analysts at serious institutions right now. Let us be direct. What does this mean for the person watching at home? A prolonged war would likely result in higher prices for other fuels and petrol, and could ripple through the global economy, adding to overall production costs. Prolonged interruptions to oil flows through the Middle East would have huge implications for oil and LNG and every market everywhere. Energy is an input to all production. It is not just oil prices that will go up. Natural gas prices will likely go up too, which is not great for people's electricity bills. The world is still very reliant on fossil fuels. Iran is the world's sixth largest oil producer, and any military conflict with the country means surging oil prices, boosting gasoline prices, and overall inflation. A loss of Iranian barrels would cause China to bid for substitute supplies, which would push prices even higher globally. Since oil is a global, fungible commodity, a disruption anywhere affects prices everywhere. In plain terms, higher oil means higher petrol at the pump. Higher petrol means higher transport costs for every product. Higher transport costs mean higher food prices. Higher food prices mean higher inflation. Higher inflation means higher interest rates. And higher interest rates mean millions of people with mortgages, car loans, and business loans pay more every single month. This war, which started in Tehran, is already on its way to your fuel station, your supermarket, and your bank statement. 8 countries that are part of the OPEC Plus oil cartel announced they would boost production of crude Sunday. The organization said it would increase production by 206,000 barrels per day in April, more than analysts had been expecting. The countries boosting output include Saudi Arabia, Russia, Iraq, the UAE, Kuwait, Kazakhstan, Algeria, and Oman. But here is the problem, and the markets understand this clearly. More production means nothing if the oil cannot physically travel through the strait. You can pump as much as you want. If tankers are being struck and ships are refusing to enter the danger zone, those extra barrels cannot reach the market. The region has no available pipeline infrastructure capable of fully bypassing the Strait of Hormuz and diverting this volume of oil to other ports. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Kuwait currently hold significant spare capacity, but getting it to market requires the strait to function. OPEC pumping more oil into a blocked pipeline solves nothing. Supply without delivery is worthless. Iran is a major oil exporter to China, but China has massive oil reserves, up to 1.5 billion barrels, and is pretty insulated even if it loses Iranian oil. China could offset a decline in Iranian oil by increasing imports from Russia. A sustained disruption would not only test energy markets, it would also test political tolerance in Washington and among allied governments that are already sensitive to increasing pressures around energy affordability. As the price shocks of the 1970s demonstrated, higher prices can quickly translate into domestic political constraints. The base case is a conflict lasting at least 1 week, with partial de-escalation driven by coercive diplomacy rather than military resolution. The tail risk, a sustained strait closure with full Gulf infrastructure targeting, remains low probability, but would represent an unprecedented supply shock. So the most likely scenario is not a complete closure, but a dangerous, unpredictable partial disruption. Ships attacked sporadically. Insurance costs extreme. Tankers sitting idle. Captains refusing to sail. That scenario alone, without a single formal blockade, is enough to keep prices elevated for weeks and cause real damage to the global economy. The numbers are clear. Oil is up. Ships are being hit. Insurance companies have walked away. And the world's most critical energy waterway is operating at a fraction of its normal capacity. This war did not just cost lives on February 28th. It began costing the global economy the moment the first missile was fired. The question now is simple. How long does this last? Because every week it continues, ordinary people around the world pay a higher price. At the pump, at the supermarket, on their electricity bill. We will keep reporting every development. This has been your oil and market special for Monday, March 2nd, 2026.